When did you last sit in complete silence, with no screen, no sound, no feed to scroll? Not for meditation, not as a practice, just because you were alive and stillness was enough. For most of us, the honest answer is, we cannot remember. And that inability to remember should unsettle you more than you expect, because it points to something deeper quietly shaping your life right now. We reach for our phones before we have fully opened our eyes. We put on a podcast to fill the silence of a shower. We scroll while we eat, half watching something while we watch something else. Our attention fractured across a dozen stimuli before noon. This is not laziness. This is something far older and far deeper and far more intentional than most people are willing to admit. The Stoic philosophers of ancient Athens understood something about human nature that modern neuroscience is only now confirming in full. The mind, left ungoverned, does not gravitate toward peace. It gravitates toward noise. It gravitates toward novelty. It gravitates always toward more. The question is not whether you are addicted to stimulation. The question is, what are you willing to do about it once you truly see it? Marcus Aurelius wrote his Meditations not as a book intended for publication, but as a private series of arguments with himself, written in the small hours before his generals woke, before the empire made its demands on him. They were exercises in resistance. Resistance against the pull of comfort, of distraction, of the infinite appeal of anything that was not the present moment. And that resistance is where the real story begins. We live in an era that has engineered stimulation to a degree no philosopher of antiquity could have imagined. The engineers of Silicon Valley have studied dopamine pathways with the same meticulous care that Marcus studied virtue. They have built machines that speak directly to the oldest architecture of the brain, and they have made those machines available at all hours without resistance, which leads to a consequence most people never fully examine. Epictetus spoke often about what he called the dichotomy of control. Some things are up to us: our judgments, our desires, our commitments. Other things are not. The weather, the opinions of others, the conditions we were born into. To confuse these two categories is, he believed, the single greatest source of human suffering. And what you are about to see is how deeply that confusion now defines modern life. Stimulation addiction is precisely this confusion made habitual. When we cannot tolerate the discomfort of an unstimulated moment, we surrender control of our inner world to the outer one. We tell the universe we cannot be at peace unless given something to react to, and the universe, through our devices, delivers endlessly, which raises a question most people avoid asking themselves directly. The Stoics called this state pathe, the reactive eruptions of feeling that seize the mind when it lacks a governing principle. They were not arguing that we should feel nothing. They were arguing that feeling should arise from within, not be summoned from without, and that distinction becomes critical once you understand how modern systems are designed to bypass it entirely. Neuroscience calls this variable reward. The feed ensures you never know what comes next. A meme, a tragedy, a wedding, an outrage, a moment of beauty. This unpredictability is the core mechanic. It is the same structure that makes slot machines impossible to stop playing, which means the problem is not your discipline but something far more systemic than that. Seneca wrote, "Withdraw into yourself." He was not prescribing isolation, but interiority. The capacity to be alone with your own mind as an act of freedom. The man who can sit in silence is the man who cannot be bought, and that idea becomes even more powerful when you compare it to the world you are currently living in. The ancient world had threshold. The sun set, the market closed, the fire burned down. There was a tempo imposed by reality itself, and within that tempo, the mind had no choice but to encounter itself. We have abolished that threshold completely, and in doing so, we have lost something most people do not even realize is missing. There is a version of you that has never been heard. It exists beneath the noise. It thinks slowly, feels deeply, decides from principle. Every time you reach for stimulation before it surfaces, you push it further away, and eventually, for some people, it stops trying entirely, which leads directly into the most important Stoic concept of all. Proharesis is the faculty of rational choice, the direction of attention, not your circumstances, not what happens to you, but what you choose to engage with. This is entirely within your power, and yet it is the very thing most people have unknowingly surrendered, which creates a deeper crisis than simple distraction. Stimulation. Addiction is a crisis of proharesis, not because people are weak, but because modern systems remove the moment of choice. The scroll has no pause. Autoplay has no gap. Notifications arrive before thoughts finish, and without that gap, something essential disappears entirely from human experience. Marcus Aurelius governed an empire and still wrote about attention. Whether he was present, whether he was choosing, whether he was being carried by the current. If a man responsible for millions considered this the most important work, it forces a reconsideration of what actually matters in your own life. Marcus writes that everything passes: names, empires, noise, urgency. What seems necessary becomes irrelevant. Time performs this quieting whether you choose it or not, which means the only real question is whether you will meet that silence voluntarily before it is imposed on you. Overstimulation recalibrates the brain. What once felt meaningful begins to feel empty. Conversations, meals, reading, even stillness itself can feel uncomfortable. This is measurable, not metaphorical, and it is reversible, but only through something most people resist more than anything else. Epictetus called it ascesis, deliberate discomfort, not as punishment, but as training. Going without, sitting in silence, reclaiming control step by step, because what feels unbearable at first becomes neutral, and what becomes neutral eventually becomes powerful in a way most people never experience. The ability to sit with discomfort is a skill. It atrophies when unused. And for years, most people have practiced its opposite: escaping instantly, filling every gap, avoiding every moment of stillness, which has consequences that extend far beyond simple distraction. Boredom is not a problem, it is a threshold. The moment before thought emerges. If you resist the urge to escape it, something deeper begins to surface. And that is where the entire process of reclaiming your mind truly begins. The Stoic solution is simple. Pause. Expand your time horizon. Ask whether this moment matters. That single interruption creates space. And in that space, something fundamental either returns or disappears completely depending on what you choose next. The hegemonicon is the governing faculty, the part of you that observes before acting. Every time you resist the pull, even briefly, you strengthen it. And that strengthening compounds in ways that are almost invisible at first, but transformative over time. Start small. 5 minutes. No phone, no sound, just presence. The mind will resist. It will produce noise. Let it. This is the practice. This is the beginning of something most people never allow themselves to experience. This is not about removing pleasure. It is about reclaiming it, choosing it, experiencing it fully instead of using it as escape, which creates a completely different quality of life that is almost unfamiliar to modern experience. Seneca wrote, "He who is everywhere is nowhere." We have built a world of constant presence everywhere, and it has resulted in absence from the only place that matters, which is here. Proharesis is attention to self. Daily reflection. Where did your attention go? Was it chosen or taken? These questions restore something that cannot be recovered any other way. You are not born needing stimulation. That need was constructed. What you were born with still exists. It is buried, not gone, and recovering it requires something very specific. The work is difficult. It takes time, But there is no more important work, because without it, life is not lived. It is consumed.